You know when someone crosses a line so many times that you realize you either stand your ground or they'll walk all over you forever. I've been in that exact position, and this is my story. Welcome to the Juicy Revenge Club. Make sure you like and subscribe for your top-notch HOA drama. It all started when Karen, our lovely HOA president with a superiority complex the size of Texas, decided my garage was her next target. She knocked on my door one Saturday morning, clipboard in hand, that fake smile plastered across her face like cheap wallpaper. She announced that the HOA board had passed a new regulation requiring all homeowners to grant access to their garages for quarterly inspections. I blinked at her, waiting for the punchline. Surely this was some kind of joke. But no, Karen was dead serious. She stood there tapping her pen against that clipboard, explaining how these inspections would ensure compliance with neighborhood standards. Compliance with what exactly, I asked. She rattled off some nonsense about hazardous materials, unauthorized storage, and maintaining property values. Translation: she wanted an excuse to snoop through everyone's private property. My garage wasn't just some dumping ground. It was my workshop, my sanctuary, the place where I kept my tools, my motorcycle, my personal belongings. And this woman thought she could just waltz in whenever she pleased because she held some meaningless title in a power-hungry HOA. I told her flat out that wasn't happening. She could inspect the outside of my house all she wanted, but my garage was off limits. Her smile vanished faster than ice cream on hot pavement. She informed me in that condescending tone that refusing inspections would result in fines, starting at $500 and increasing with each violation. Then she turned on her heel and marched away, leaving me standing in my doorway with my blood boiling. Before we dive in deeply, let us know in the comments where you're watching this story from. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with anger and disbelief. Who did this woman think she was? The garage was part of my home, my private property. I'd bought this house fair and square, paid my mortgage every month, and now some busybody with too much time on her hands wanted to invade my space. I pulled out the HOA bylaws, reading through page after page of regulations. Nowhere did it mention mandatory garage inspections. This was something Karen had cooked up herself, probably hoping everyone would be too intimidated to fight back. Well, she picked the wrong homeowner this time. The next morning I started making calls. I contacted every neighbor on my street, asking if they'd received the same notice. Most of them had, and just like I suspected, most of them were terrified of Karen. One neighbor, an elderly man named George, told me he'd already agreed to the inspection just to avoid trouble. Another neighbor, a single mom named Lisa, said she couldn't afford the fines, so she had no choice but to comply. Their fear made me angrier. We were all adults, homeowners, taxpayers, and yet we were being bullied by one person who'd appointed herself neighborhood dictator. I decided right then that I wasn't backing down. If Karen wanted access to my garage, she'd have to go through hell to get it. I started planning my defense like a military operation. First, I needed to make my garage legally impenetrable. I researched property rights, consulted with a lawyer who confirmed that without proper legal authority or evidence of criminal activity, no HOA had the right to demand entry into enclosed private spaces. Armed with that knowledge, I sent Karen a certified letter explaining that I would not be granting access and citing the specific laws protecting my rights. I kept a copy for my records, knowing full well this wouldn't be the end of it. Sure enough, 3 days later, another letter appeared in my mailbox. This one threatened immediate fines and potential legal action if I didn't comply within 1 week. Karen had even underlined the word legal twice, as if that would scare me into submission. I laughed out loud reading it. She wanted to play legal games? Fine, I could play too, but I wasn't just going to fight her with paperwork. I wanted to make a statement, something that would send a clear message that my property was mine and mine alone. That's when I got the idea to turn my garage into an absolute fortress. If Karen wanted in, she'd have to face obstacles that would make Fort Knox look like a garden shed. I started with the basics. I installed a heavy-duty steel-reinforced garage door, the kind you'd see on commercial properties. This thing was built to withstand hurricanes and battering rams. The installation guys looked at me like I was insane, but I didn't care. Next came the locks. I'm not talking about your standard garage door lock. I installed a multi-point locking system with deadbolts that extended into the frame at 6 different locations. Each lock required a separate key, and I was the only person who had the complete set, but I wasn't done. I added a state-of-the-art security system with motion sensors, cameras covering every angle, and an alarm that could wake the dead. Anyone who got within 10 feet of my garage door would trigger alerts sent directly to my phone. I also installed bright LED floodlights that would illuminate the entire area if the sensors detected movement at night. The cameras were my favorite addition. High definition, night vision, cloud storage, the works. Every inch of my garage exterior was now under surveillance 24/7. If Karen or anyone else tried anything, I'd have crystal clear evidence. Then I got creative with the interior. I reinforced the walls with steel plating, installed a secondary interior door with its own security system, and even added a safe room feature in case of emergencies. Was it overkill? Absolutely. Did it feel amazing? You better believe it. The entire transformation took about 2 weeks and cost me a small fortune, but watching my garage evolve into an impenetrable fortress was worth every penny. My neighbors started noticing the changes. Some asked what I was doing, and I simply told them I was upgrading my security. Word spread fast in our little neighborhood, and I knew it was only a matter of time before Karen heard about it. She showed up on a Thursday afternoon, her face already red before she even opened her mouth. She demanded to know what I thought I was doing, transforming my garage into what she called an eyesore and a violation of neighborhood aesthetics. I calmly explained that everything I'd installed met local building codes and HOA regulations regarding exterior modifications. She sputtered, searching for a comeback, but couldn't find one. The steel door matched the color scheme, the cameras were discreet, and the lighting was actually an improvement for neighborhood safety. She tried a different angle, claiming my security measures were excessive and created an atmosphere of paranoia. I asked her why she was so concerned about my security unless she had plans to break in. Her face turned an even deeper shade of red. She threatened me again with fines, with legal action, with everything in her limited playbook. I just smiled and told her I looked forward to seeing her in court. As she stormed off, I noticed several neighbors watching from their windows. A few gave me subtle thumbs up. Maybe my stand was giving others courage too. The following week I received the official fine notice, $500 for refusing the garage inspection. I didn't pay it. Instead, I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board, demanding a special meeting to address Karen's overreach. I also sent copies of all correspondence to every board member, along with documentation from my lawyer explaining why these inspections were illegal. The board had no choice but to schedule a meeting. When the night arrived, I showed up prepared with a presentation that would make a courtroom lawyer proud. I had printed copies of property law statutes, precedents from other HOA disputes, and testimonials from neighbors who felt intimidated by Karen's tactics. The meeting room was packed. Apparently, word had spread that someone was finally challenging Karen, and people wanted to see it happen. Karen sat at the head table, her expression somewhere between furious and nervous. When it was my turn to speak, I laid out everything. I explained how the garage inspection rule had never been properly voted on, how it violated our rights as homeowners, and how Karen had been using intimidation tactics to force compliance. I showed examples of her threatening letters, played recordings of her confrontational visits, and presented the legal documentation proving she had no authority. The room was silent except for my voice. I could see other homeowners nodding, some taking notes. When I finished, I asked the board directly, "Do you support this illegal invasion of privacy, or will you do the right thing?" The board members looked uncomfortable. One finally spoke up, admitting they'd never actually voted on garage inspections. Karen had presented it as an executive decision that didn't require full board approval. Another member said they'd had concerns but didn't want to rock the boat. Rock the boat? I nearly laughed. The boat was already sinking under Karen's dictatorship. I demanded they vote immediately to rescind the garage inspection rule and remove the fines from my account. After some whispered discussion, they agreed, 4-1, with Karen being the only dissenting vote. The rule was dead. My fine was erased, but Karen wasn't done. After the meeting, she cornered me in the parking lot, her face twisted with rage. She hissed that I'd made a powerful enemy, that she'd find other ways to make my life miserable, that I'd regret challenging her authority. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Bring it on." I wasn't afraid of her anymore, and she knew it. Over the next few weeks, Karen tried everything. She reported my lawn for being a 1/4 inch too long. She claimed my mailbox was the wrong shade of black. She even tried to say my car was parked 6 inches over the property line. Each time I documented her harassment, took photos with measurements, and filed counter-complaints. The other board members were getting tired of her petty vendettas. But Karen's biggest mistake was yet to come. One night, my security cameras caught her approaching my garage with what looked like a crowbar. She actually tried to pry open my fortress. The motion sensors triggered immediately, flooding the area with light and setting off alarms that echoed through the neighborhood. Karen dropped the crowbar and ran, but it was too late. Everything was recorded in perfect high definition. I had her red-handed attempting to break into my property. The next morning, I didn't go to the HOA. I went straight to the police. I showed them the footage of Karen attempting to break in, explained the history of harassment, and filed a formal report. The officer watching the video shook his head in disbelief. He said they'd investigate and possibly press charges for attempted breaking and entering. Word spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Karen, the almighty HOA president, caught on camera trying to break into someone's garage. People who'd been terrified of her for years suddenly found their voices. Complaints about her behavior flooded the HOA board. Stories of intimidation, unfair fines, and abuse of power came pouring out. The board had no choice but to act. They called an emergency meeting and voted to remove Karen from her position as president. The vote was unanimous. She tried to fight it, threatened lawsuits, screamed about conspiracies, but it was over. Her reign of terror had ended, brought down by her own arrogance and my fortress of a garage. The police investigation resulted in Karen receiving a criminal trespass warning and community service. She also had to pay restitution for the attempted break-in. The amount wasn't huge, but the humiliation was priceless. She avoided eye contact whenever she saw me after that. A few months later, Karen put her house up for sale and moved out of the neighborhood. Some people said she couldn't handle the shame. Others said her husband was tired of her obsessive need for control. Either way, she was gone, and the neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief. The new HOA president was a reasonable guy named Tom who believed in actual community building rather than dictatorship. One of his first acts was to review and remove dozens of ridiculous rules Karen had implemented over the years. Life in the neighborhood improved dramatically. As for my garage fortress, I kept every single security feature, not because I needed them anymore, but because they served as a reminder that standing up to bullies is worth it, a reminder that your property rights matter, and a reminder that sometimes the best defense is an impenetrable offense. My neighbors still joke about my garage being the safest place in the county. Some have even upgraded their own security, inspired by my stand against Karen. We've become a community that looks out for each other rather than one that lives in fear. Every time I pull into my driveway and see that steel-reinforced door, those cameras, those lights, I smile. Karen demanded access to my garage, thought she could intimidate me into surrendering my rights. Instead, I turned it into a fortress and ended her tyranny in the process. The end. Please like and subscribe for more HOA showdowns like this. Do you think she got what she deserved? Comment below.